Game faces, people. We're live. Come on. Get it together.
I never had it. I
was going to say.
It's a terrible phrase to choose. It's Friday. It very much feels like a Friday in this conversational space right now. Here with should start with a hello. I'm Brent Hazelton, Milwaukee Chamber Theater's artistic director. Great to, nobody's joining us yet, but they will eventually. On this Friday afternoon with two of the most tattooed theater makers in Milwaukee.
That's true.
Yes, lighting designer Colin Gawronski, who for me is in the middle, presumably in the middle for everyone watching, and stage manager Martie Barthel, who are both working on our production of Stew, which is rad and closes this weekend. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Happy Friday to you.
It is.
It kind of is. It feels good. Like the sun is shining. We're heading into a closing weekend. We've had a couple great houses this week. People are continuing to enjoy the show. So yeah, it's feeling, feeling the positive vibes of like being a theater maker who is back making theater again in the world for real people, as opposed to this screen world.
Yes.
Yeah, which is really, really good.
It's a little bit triggering being on screen again.
A little back to
it.
Right. But you don't have to like call any rehearsal breaks or anything else on screen right now. It's good. It's good. Yeah, just the whole the one really great advantage of making theater in person as opposed to on screens is that you don't have to look at yourself while you're doing it. Which is, yeah. I mean, I remember, Martie, when we were working with Elise on Underneath the Lintel last season, sort of half of my brain was, always focused on the play and Elise and what I was hearing. And the other half of it was always focused on does my face actually do that?
Yeah.
Or is this just...
I don't think you were
what
alone
happens
there.
in the screen world. No, it seems pretty unanimous for everybody who has to move into the Zoom space. But for those who don't know, Martie, what does a stage manager do? Right? We all sort of know that these people exist in the world, right? But for nobody who's ever been involved deeply in a theater production, what is the point of you in a show? What are you bringing to it? What are you adding to it? What would not happen if you weren't there? Maybe that's a better way to look at it.
Well, it would be much more difficult to get the show running consistently and ever without the position of a stage manager.
Mm-hmm.
To borrow from Malkia, she likes to call me the glue, which I guess is an appropriate way of kind of describing in a nutshell what the position of the stage manager does. I really look at my position as the one person in the room that has got to be able to communicate clearly and effectively with every single member of the team. Mm-hmm. Regardless of ego, regardless of how I'm feeling, regardless of anything, because at the end of the day, it's the eyes of the stage manager that are responsible for keeping the vision of the director alive and the show intact, and to make sure everything happens. Mm-hmm. So whatever I have to do, whatever kind of support I have to be. And it does range from emotional support to the limited technical knowledge that I do have, but to technical support and using your common sense and everything in between. So it's really a multifaceted role, I guess. But not only do I have to be able to communicate well with everybody, but everybody has to feel comfortable communicating with me. Mm-hmm. and trusting that I'm going to relay the information that they're giving me to the appropriate people. So it's really kind of like a liaison, but also there's an artistic side to it. With calling the show, once you get into the theater and into the running of the production, then I'm responsible for, making sure the lights go on when they're supposed to, and the sound happens when it's supposed to, and the set pieces get moved when they're supposed to. So mm-hmm. it's a big job.
Yeah, and just highlighting a couple things you said in there, particularly as a director and now as an artistic director, that notion of show maintenance and consistency is huge. Because again, maybe not a ton of people know this, but as soon as the show opens, the director goes away.
Right.
Maybe they come back for closing, but usually they're off working on another thing and don't have the opportunity to come back or check in on the show. So the stage manager, as sort of that continued voice of the consistency of the director, not only to maintain the show as it was on opening, but to have the sensitivity and the good artistic taste to allow it to grow and evolve through performances, because they always grow and evolve.
Right.
And that's a hugely important skill that I think often gets really overlooked when people are talking about what makes a good stage manager, other than the sort of communication and all the paperwork and the rehearsal efficiency and things like that. But someone who is also one of the leading artists of the production and has to understand and intuit all of the things that go into it. And as you say, not only be able to speak everyone else's language in the room, but know enough about how they do their jobs so that you can understand that when something isn't working, why it's not working, and how to begin to address things to fix it. So it's such a hugely crucial position. And I'm very glad that you in particular are working on this one for all of those skills.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It's it's been interesting coming back after having been away from it, because honestly, I haven't been away from stage managing until COVID. I had not stage managed consistently for, gosh, maybe 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
At least one show a season, often back-to-back shows. Prior to the last couple of years, I was working full-time in corporate America before doing stage management full-time. But it was incredible to me how much I lost mentally over the COVID 20 months or so, where we weren't in person, and really learning what kind of toll that took to be back in the room, and to relearn how to manage those personalities and those the languages. It's been a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, and I just remember being in that rehearsal space with you for Underneath the Lintel. The first thing that was the first thing that I at that point had directed in 30 months. Just with transition into new employment and stuff. And I remember being in that space and both of us sort of realizing, like, on day 2, like, we're very rusty at this. It's just, why is this so hard? And of course, on top of all of the the emotional fatigue of trying to create virtual theater in that pandemic space and keep everyone safe, and the world being a trash fire, adding to that the fact that we've been sitting on the bench for a while. Yeah, it's tough. So the thing we're trying to remember as we're coming back to the theater, right? As much as we are all sort of getting reacclimated, audiences have to get reacclimated too. We've all been watching stuff on screens for the better part of a year, and it's a very different experience shifting from that to actually being in that communal space again. And that takes adjustment too. Even I can feel my own attention span being very diminished from all of this screen, and now living in this sort of weird TikTok world where, like, you get 60 seconds of narrative and that's it. It's hard to engage for 90 minutes.
Although for me, not every time, but sometimes it feels so good to be like, I don't have to look at that screen, that phone, because when we went back, for me, at least when I went back, like, there's a lot of office stuff and a lot of computer time still. Yeah. And it's like, I get to sit in rehearsal and watch this 90-minute show. Sign me up. Let me come in a little bit early. Like, I'm so glad to do it.
And one of the things that on that note, when when we went into the theater for the first time and sort of that first tech run through, very clearly remember sitting in that theater and being like, there's no screen to look at in here. This is amazing. Yeah, it's a screen-free space, people. Come and join it. Come and join it. But as lighting designer, Colin, maybe not quite as mysterious as what a stage manager does. Like, if you don't do your job, literally no one sees the play. But I guess talk a little bit about the more than just that basic level, right? Like, how are you telling a story? How are you dramaturging as a designer for whatever is on stage?
I think time is the biggest thing for me. It's one of the most fun things for me to play with, like time of day and time passage. And this play particularly starts in the morning and moves through the day. And I think without giving anything away, it's a huge part of the show that was a really both a challenge and a joy to see how we express that, and how as subtle as it may be, it's I went back and watched the show on Wednesday, and it still feels present. I still feel good about it. So that moving the show forward, you know, even in a static kind of lighting look, you know, if you think of it like a painting, that it's still telling a story. You know, is it a color? Is it an angle? Is it a shape? And there's you know, there's some really fun stuff that I got to do in there that you don't necessarily get in a show that, you know, sometimes a show is very static and it's supposed to stay still and you just kind of, you know, light the faces and move on. But yeah, so just that texture of, you know, real life. And I mean, I think I told Melkia I was, you know, spent about 4 months just like wake up in the morning, take a picture of the light coming through the window in the hallway, and you know, sit eating lunch. You know, when still, I think we were still back working at home, and I'd be like on the couch and be like, oh, look what it's doing at 12 o'clock now, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that naturalism that, you know, is super fun to play with too.
Yeah, and all those things. I mean, for me as a director or producer, audience member, whatever, lighting is in many ways the most important of the individual design aesthetic elements because it has the most emotional range. And that's really where, for me, the most beautiful duet of live theater is always between the emotional journey of the actors and how the lighting designer is choosing to support, reflect, highlight in very, very subtle ways. I mean, what you're talking about color and angle, right? The way there is so much mood and tone and feeling in the way the direction from which light hits someone's face, right? And it's, I don't know, it's just such an amazing flexible tool. And I think particularly with a play like Stew, as you say, time of day is a very important narrative element in the show. Also, without giving too much away for those who haven't seen it yet, the notion of where we are when we are is also very important, not only literally but emotionally, and the ability to convey and offset and set up some of those things through design is really crucial, and I mean, certainly well accomplished, I think, in this production, but is fun to watch, and always fun to watch all that take shape. Yeah. So the two of you together have like made a few plays in your lives and a few other life events.
It's true.
Yeah.
What number were you gonna say? What number this was?
I was, and I was going to be wrong, but
ish. It is.
I'm not sure if I've counted. Yeah, or
I think this is only the second show where you've been my lighting designer.
I think that's true. I think that we've worked on more than that, but yeah, I think you're right.
But in the lighting designer, stage manager capacity, I think this is only our second time.
Oh no, third. Yeah. Black Nativity.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Marty.
I love that you knew that was what I forgot.
I did.
Terrible.
Already our minds are becoming one.
So talking a little bit about that notion of collaboration, right? What is, you know, because again, if it's not, as you're saying, Colin, the static sort of lights up, lights down, we're in the same space the whole time. If there is an emotional journey going on in the lighting design, it is the stage manager's job really to execute that emotional journey based on where the cues sit and where the cues are called, and having to not just do it by the stopwatch, right, but actually sort of intuit and understand, you know, this cue has to exist when this actor is expressing this beat, right? So just talk a little bit about that collaboration and how that works and what that dialogue between stage manager and lighting designer is.
You want to start that one?
Sure. You know, at the risk of kind of passing the buck, I don't have to tell Martie a lot because she knows so intuitively what should happen. And I think I love to pass along, you know, and because like you said, stage managers are artists. And so I don't like to spell it out too much if people don't need it. And there's a lot of, you know, like in Stew, a lot of the transitions, I wrote something on my cue sheet, like when she's ready or like when she's in place. And I think, and Martie just intuitively knows that it picks up the phone and, you know, and goes into character or something like that. And so, yeah, which sounds like I just don't do my job.
Well, but no, but that notion of a cue being called when she's ready.
Yeah.
Right. Is there's a whole universe of emotional storytelling that goes into that choice, which goes right back to, as you said, a stage manager being an artist, somebody who has to be emotionally connected not only to the production overall, but that individual actor's journey that night, because these things live and grow and change. So for me as a director, those are sort of the things that make me feel the best about the way a show is being built, in terms of it being able to live and survive and grow a little bit as it goes on, right? Because we're not saying when she puts the pot down at the same time she's taking one step stage left, called it.
Yeah,
that's nonsense.
Right.
That's a trap. Then she won't do it. You know, if I see that in rehearsal, then she'll never do it again.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I think too, I mean, for my part, it is, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. So I think there are things that I pick up along the way that are mostly true across the board for people. And I think one of those things that remains constant is, when I ask, one of the things I always ask is what is the uptime or what is the downtime of my lighting designer? And I also sit with my lighting designer or my sound designer at that first tech. I try to find time to sit with both of them and talk through how they like to work through tech. That tells me a lot about how that designer works and how they approach their work and how they cue for themselves in their head, which is important for me to understand, excuse me, so that I can start to understand what they want to happen within the context of their cueing or their soundscape, or in Colin's case, their lightscape, you know, and when that needs to complete based on what's happening on stage. So it's not just an understanding, I don't think, of the emotional range that's going on stage, but there is that technical understanding of how much time it actually takes for that GO to leave my mouth, hit the ear of my board op, that button to happen, and then that to set off the actual light or sound to complete. So the collaboration is very important, and particularly early on. A lot of folks tell me that they like being in the tech room with me because it's usually a smooth tech. I won't say anything about this process, Colin, but it's mostly smooth tech.
No, you got us together. You got us together.
Well, yeah. You were no small part of that, but I lost my train of thought. Actually, it's gone.
But that, you know, the rhythm of it that you just articulated, right? Yes. Being able to sort of know the timing and the pacing of things, and it's, I mean, for me, that watching. There are few things more exciting in the theater than watching a stage manager call a very complexly cued show that lives very emotionally. Because you know, just sort of standing behind that person in the booth. There's a whole lot of stage managers in the world. Suddenly, how many of them I've lurked behind calling shows? But the stage manager sort of begins breathing with the show. I mean, that sort of emotional arc and energy has to live in them to really make the thing flow in the way the designers have set it up, which is it's like a dance performance almost, a very subtle one, but just in terms of the way breath is connected to intuition, and you know, it's really cool to watch. The good ones, at least, right? And we've all seen those stage managers also who never take their head out of the book and are just sort of cueing by what word is being said or like what the stopwatch says, which is not ideal. No. Yeah. So let's talk about Stu for a second as we are coming to the end of our time here. What does it mean to you, and why should people see it?
This show is, I'll just jump on that one, Colin, right over you. I was so excited when the opportunity to do the show live landed at my feet, because when we did it with the Black Theater Festival, the inaugural one, I think that was the inaugural one, right?
Yep.
2 years ago?
Yep.
I fell in love with the story, because it is at its core, it is a universal story. I think, at least for me and my experience, growing up, the women in my family and the way my family is structured, like I can see that story happening. And I've seen it happen 100 times, you know, in different ways within my family. And I think it is such it's a universal, it's a reflection of a universal truth. Right. And I think that is at the core of what we as storytellers, as story keepers, want to be doing, and to get to come back and this to be the first main stage production back after our hiatus just is incredibly meaningful to me. And the subject matter is really interesting without being too on the nose and hitting you over the head with what's going on in the world and how people are moving through it. And yeah, I think it's a interesting story, and it's an important story, and it's one everybody should see.
Now I got to follow that. I would just say, and I think I've said it a couple times to people, that it's such a smart script. It's Pulitzer Prize winning script, but like, you know, beyond the awards, you don't see a piece like this all the time that just weaves everything together so incredibly. It tells the story so beautifully. It's new, it's old, it's got elements that I would see in a 30 or 40-year-old script. It's got elements that I would expect from a brand new piece of contemporary theater. It's really something for everybody. And there's, you know, I know there's only 3 days left, but I would tell people to go twice, because I learn something new every time I watch it. There's little subtle things that you pick up on each and every time. It's really so incredibly intricate in a way that I think the way that she writes overlapping dialogue and fast-paced kind of storylines, it belies something that's a little bit more fast and furious, but there's so much depth of character. These are real people, like you said. We know these women, and we, you know, these are fully realized human beings, and the actors are doing just such a great job with it. So, like, super proud of this work, and so glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
And it is, I mean, structurally, the script is, I think, really smartly built. Particularly from a first-time playwright. It's either there was a genius dramaturg on this thing, or Zora is just very naturally gifted, both of which are probably true. But it is a traditionally well-made play, right? Structurally, it's something we recognize as being very of the traditional American theater, but filled with so many contemporary ideas, and the fact that the play centers 4 Black women automatically turns that structure on its head in really interesting ways. And I will, just to follow up and advocate your see it twice if you can, because of what the play is and because of the way the play functions, once you have seen it through once, you will pick up so many more things seeing it again the second time. From the second the lights come up, once you know where the play goes, you will go, oh, I get it now. And that will inform your understanding not only of the play and of the characters in the play, but as you were saying, Martie, these core themes that are very relevant and very resonant, and things that we are all dealing with today. The metaphor just becomes way richer.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about these 4 Black women, one of the questions that I've asked everybody is, who do you identify with? I mean, talking, you know, in our first conversation with Malkia Stampley, the director, Malkia and I decided that we were both Lillians, as the sort of, I don't know, the person in the world who is supposed to like pull everything together and keep everything going and on time and on track, and doesn't get a ton of space to deal with their own stuff, but can't really, you know. Yes. And I think Olivia, interestingly, identified as a Nellie, a sort of the older teenager who was just so desperately ready to move out into the world and make her own way. So what for the two of you, where do you sit? Which character do you watch this show every night and you're like, oh, that's my story?
I'll let you go first, Colin.
That's a great question. I think it depends on the day. Sometimes I'm the 12-year-old girl.
I just want you to say that you're the little mama.
Sometimes I'm Lillian when everybody's at her a little bit because she's annoying. Sometimes like mama, just trying to, you know, keep everybody in line. Do I have to pick one? I have to pick one.
No, I think you just answered the question.
Yeah, I think I did.
If you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
Today.
Well, I certainly aspire to be Milena, especially when she's yelling down the stairs because people just don't listen.
Yes. Yes. All right. So Colin is in fact a little mama, which I find very satisfying.
Mhm.
Marty,
It feels right.
Yeah,
it does. It's appropriate.
Well, I think in true stage manager form, and to follow up on Colin, yes, I feel like all of them at different points of my day, even. But I think too that's part of the genius of the script is that I can see myself in every single one of those characters at different points in my life. Lately, I felt a little more like Mama, to be completely honest. But
that would have been my guess. Were I guessing?
yeah, but the Lillian thing and keeping things together and keeping it rolling is certainly relevant too. But there's the 12-year-old who wants to have a tantrum and the 17-year-old who just wants to run away and live in the North Woods and do that. Not that that's what she wants to do, but that's what this
That's it. That
teenager
17-year-old wants to do.
Yeah, has nothing to do with the show.
Yeah,
and I hope we're never rid of that too. I hope we keep doing that.
Yeah.
No, that's where my inner 17-year-old lives too.
Mm.
Like, can we just jump off the grid and like do whatever we want to do away from everyone else?
Yes.
But that's what we have long weekends and vacations for, in theory, if we ever get those again in the world of regional theater. Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you for this time. Thank you for your insights and being so honest about who you are in the play. That's great. So we've been talking with, for those of you who joined us a little after the start, Martie Barthel and Colin Gawronski, who are respectively stage manager and lighting designer for our production of Stew, which is running through Sunday. We have 4 more performances. Tickets are available. If you are an artist or an industry professional, walk up to the box office and say like, hey, I want my $15 artist ticket, because you'll get one of those this weekend for all shows. Otherwise, come down and join us. It's everybody has to be vaccinated. Everybody's got to keep a mask on their whole face the whole time. Well, not your eyes, but you know. And we're only doing 50% capacity to allow everybody to spread out a little bit if they're so inclined and want a little more room in the room, as we are getting comfortable with putting ourselves back into these large spaces. So we're at the Broadway Theater Center in the 3rd Ward in the Cabot Theater. If you don't know us, come down. Show is 90 minutes, no intermission. And you will, I'm pretty sure you're going to find it rewarding. Everyone who has seen it so far has. So thanks for that. Thanks for your time, friends. Everybody have a happy Friday. And yeah, find 90 minutes in your weekend to join us in the theater if you can. It'll be worth it. Take care.
Really. Thank you.